At her college reunion, Vivian Hayes admitted in front of everyone that her first love was more unforgettable than her husband, Ethan Cole. The video went viral. Ethan watched his wife blush and nod on the screen, his eyes like chips of ice. First, he made the instigators bankrupt, unemployed, and utterly ruined. Then, he made Vivian watch as her family's business collapsed, her parents screaming curses at her. Finally, he handed her the divorce papers. "Sign this, and you walk away with nothing." Vivian signed with a trembling hand. Ethan smiled faintly. "Game over. You lose." The phone screen was a vicious glare, its buzzing vibration and obscenity in the dead quiet of the study. Ethan didn't look up. The ash on the cigarette between his fingers had grown long and gray, hanging precariously. The red glow of the ember pulsed in the dark, illuminating the hard, tense line of his jaw, a line forged from cold iron. On the screen, messages were flooding the college alumni group chat. One short video after another, punctuated by exaggerated exclamation points and garish LOLs. He finally swiped the screen open. The image was shaky, the light sleazy and dim. It was the unique, eardrum-assaulting roar of a high-end karaoke bar. The camera panned across faces distorted by alcohol and manic energy, finally settling on the center of the private room. His wife, Vivian, was surrounded, half-pushed, half-cajoled by a group of old classmates. Her face was flushed with a color Ethan had never seen before, a mix of awkwardness, anxiety, and something approaching a girlish coyness. She had dressed meticulously before going out, and now, under the hazy, colored lights, she looked like a stranger. All right. Vivian, queen of the hour. Your turn. Truth or dare? Pick one." A man with a slick-back comb-over and a thick neck. Ethan remembered his name was Greg Peterson. Was holding the microphone, his spittle practically hitting the camera lens, his voice high and strained with excitement. "Yeah, Viv, don't chicken out. You were the campus beauty, and you're still a knockout. You can handle it." Another, shriller female voice cut in. Laura Jennings, Vivian's old roommate, was grinning, nudging Vivian's shoulder. Vivian, shoved into the spotlight, shot a panicked look around at the ring of faces, all hungry for a spectacle. Pinned like an animal in the headlights, she was trapped. She bit her lower lip, her voice barely audible over the thumping bass, laced with a tremor she couldn't hide. "Truth. I'll do truth." "Yes." Greg slapped his thigh, the fat on his face jiggling. He grinned, revealing teeth stained yellow from smoking, his eyes glinting with a malicious thrill. "Love it. Okay, here's the question." He drew out the words, milking the moment for all it was worth. The whole room held its breath, the only sound the deafening beat of the music. "Vivian Hayes, time to come clean." Greg's voice shot up, sharp as a prosecutor's. "Deep down in your heart, who is the most unforgettable man? Your husband, the one and only Mr. Ethan Cole, or, your college boyfriend? The one you nearly died for, the one the whole campus knew about. Your first love, Julian Vance." The question detonated in the small room. Whistles, shrieks, and the sound of palms slamming on tables exploded, nearly tearing the roof off. The camera shook violently, capturing every face twisted with the ecstasy of prying into a private life. In that instant, Ethan stopped breathing. His fingers clenched around the cigarette. Hot ash cascaded down, searing a black mark into the expensive mahogany of his desk. He didn't notice. His eyes were nailed to the woman on the screen. The color drained from Vivian's face, leaving it a ghastly white. She looked as if she'd been struck, her body swaying slightly. She instinctively glanced toward the camera, or rather, at the person holding the phone, her eyes pleading, desperate. "Come on, Viv. Spit it out," Laura urged, shoving her hard. "Yeah, you can't back out now. Where's that fun girl from a minute ago?" Another man jeered. "Answer the question. Ethan or Julian?" "Julian. Julian. Julian." Someone started the chant, and soon the biased, malicious roar became a tidal wave, crashing over the entire room. Vivian stood alone, engulfed by the noise. She clutched the hem of her dress, her knuckles white from the pressure. She looked up again, her gaze sweeping over the faces that were once familiar, now hideously warped. Finally, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from her, as if she had been crushed by the sheer weight of their malice, she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was a small movement, but under the focused lens, under the glare of a dozen pairs of eyes, it was as clear as a slow-motion replay. Her lips parted silently, as if to say something, but in the end, she just nodded again, more deliberately this time. And with that nod, a flicker of something, inexplicable, a blush of almost girlish shyness, flashed across her cheeks. "Whoa, Damn, Viv, you've got guts. Ha ha ha. I knew it. Ethan Cole just got served. You got that? Send it to the group. Let Ethan see how honest his wife is. The room erupted in a deafening explosion of drunken, vulgar laughter and screams. The camera spun wildly before freezing on Vivian's stunned, lost face, now marred by that strange, telltale blush. The video ended. The screen went dark, reflecting Ethan's own blurred, cold image. The study was deathly silent. Outside, the distant neon glow of the city bled through the window, carving cold patches of light on the floor. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan leaned back in his large leather chair. It creaked softly. He raised his hand and pressed the long-extinguished cigarette, but directly into the fresh black burn mark on his desk. TSSSSS. A faint wisp of smoke curled up and vanished. His face was a blank mask. No anger, no sorrow, no shock. Only the fathomless, frozen stillness of a winter lake. His eyes, normally sharp and piercing, were now like two abandoned wells. Hollow, cold, reflecting nothing. He picked up his phone, his fingertips sliding across the cold screen. The group chat, still pulsating with gleeful malice, was a frenzy of new videos, new photos, new LMAOs, and at Ethan Cole, you gotta see how honest your wife is. He opened one of the new clips. It was filmed from a different angle. As Vivian nodded, Greg Peterson's greasy face was split by a triumphant grin that nearly reached his ears. Laura Jennings was clapping ecstatically, her mouth forming the name Julian. Ethan's gaze, precise as a scalpel, dissected every face in the video, every person twisted with excitement by the game. Greg Peterson, Laura Jennings, Kevin Miller, the one who started the Julian chant, Megan Shaw, the one holding her phone up, filming with the most glee. A few other blurred but recognizable faces. Good. He exited the video, opened his contacts, and found a number saved not as a name, but as a string of digits. He dialed. The call was answered instantly. A low, emotionless male voice on the other end. Mr. Cole, it's me. Ethan's voice was terrifyingly calm, like ice forming on water. I have a job for you. I need it done immediately. Your orders, sir. I need you to look into a few people. Greg Peterson, Laura Jennings, Kevin Miller, Megan Shaw. He recited the names of everyone clearly visible, everyone who had reveled the loudest, and everyone else who was at Vivian's reunion tonight. The royal suite at the Gilded Cage. I want a complete list. Understood. What are we looking for? Everything. Ethan said, the corner of his mouth pulling up into a slow, merciless curve devoid of warmth. Their jobs, their companies, business dealings, bank records, tax filings, family situations, any dirty little secrets they have. I want everything you can dig up. The deeper, the better. The dirtier, the better. There was a 1-second pause on the other end, followed by a clipped, efficient reply. Received. You'll have a preliminary report in 3 days. One day, Ethan said, his voice ironclad, leaving no room for negotiation. I only want results. Yes, Mr. Cole. One day. The call ended. Ethan placed the phone gently on the desk. Click. He stood up and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the city was a glittering tapestry of a million lights, a dream of wealth and motion. His tall silhouette was reflected on the cold glass, a silent, dormant volcano. The fire of betrayal had been lit. Now it was time for the reckoning. He didn't need to roar in anger or demand answers in hysterical rage. What he wanted was precise, total, soul-crushing annihilation. The game had begun. Only this time, he was the one making the rules. Ethan yanked open the heavy curtains, and the pale, harsh morning light flooded the study, making his eyes ache. He stood in the light, his back ramrod straight, radiating a chill colder than the late autumn air outside. The phone on the mahogany desk vibrated once, the screen lighting up. No name, just a string of encrypted characters. Ethan picked it up, unlocked it, and tapped the message. A single compressed file sat in his inbox. The subject line was brutally concise. Target profiles, preliminary dossier. He opened it. Dozens of documents, images, and even a few muffled audio recordings instantly filled the screen. The efficiency was impressive. Ethan settled back into his large leather chair, his eyes scanning the screen like a high-precision instrument, cold and fast, taking in every word, every picture. Greg Peterson, VP of Sales, mid-sized construction supply company. Looked successful, but the company was actually on the brink of collapse, squeezed out by competitors. He was keeping it afloat with a series of desperate loans and a few under-the-table kickbacks. Personally addicted to gambling, he owed a massive debt to several offshore online casinos and was being hounded by collectors. He'd recently, secretly, embezzled a sizable sum from the company to cover his losses. Laura Jennings, stay-at-home wife, married to a mid-level city official with some real power. Her main career was climbing the social ladder of various wives' circles, driven by vanity and a need to show off. Behind her supposedly upstanding husband's back, she accepted luxury gifts and shopping cards from people looking for favors. She was currently nagging her husband to get his distant nephew a cushy job in a lucrative city department. Kevin Miller owned a small, struggling ad agency. His primary hobby was taking covert photos, especially upskirt shots or pictures of drunk women at parties, which he stored in a private, encrypted cloud drive. His company's books were a mess, and tax evasion was standard practice. Megan Shaw, an editor at a fashion magazine, seemingly well-connected. In reality, she regularly used her position to accept bribes for advertorials and to smear competitors. The kill shot. She'd been having an affair with a married man for 3 years. Hotel records, money transfers, and even a few graphic, intimate photos were all there. And a few others, the ones who had been yelling the loudest in the video. An accountant who embezzled from his company, a university lecturer who had faked his research, a financial advisor who ran a shady crypto scam. Ethan's fingertips tapped a slow, steady rhythm on the cold surface of his desk. Looking at these souls, their polished exteriors stripped away to reveal the rot within, he felt no surprise. Only a detached, clinical assessment. Insects. A swarm of insects, thriving on parasitism, on breaking rules, on the cheap thrill of their own stupid, malicious games. The foundations of their gleeful lives were fragile, ready to shatter at a touch. He picked up another phone from his desk, an old-school burner phone used only for specific contacts. He dialed a number. "It's me." Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. "Targets acquired. Execute Plan A. Start with Peterson." "Understood." The voice on the other end was equally devoid of feeling. "The materials are ready. Anonymous tips will be sent to the IRS and his bank simultaneously this afternoon." The money he embezzled was routed through his brother-in-law's company. "The trail is very clean." "Not clean enough." Ethan cut in, his tone icy. "Make the trail disappear. I want him so buried, he'll never dig his way out." "Yes, sir. It will be done. Also, we've already contacted his offshore creditors. They are very eager to pay a friendly visit to his office tomorrow morning." "Excellent." A faint, cold smile, like a razor blade skimming across ice, touched Ethan's lips. "Move on Jennings at the same time. The gifts she took, have a concerned citizen deliver them directly to her husband's office. I want it fast. A surprise. Photos and a list of the gift cards are ready. They'll be on her husband's desk in an anonymous package by noon today." Kevin Miller. Ethan's eyes scanned the file on the sleazy man. His collection. Find someone with skills and plaster it all over the internet. Make sure his wife and his major clients get a special delivery to their emails and social media feeds. As for his company's tax problems, make the tip to the IRS very detailed. Cloud drive has been accessed. Content is being processed. The IRS tip will be sent concurrently. Megan Shaw. Ethan paused, looking at the perfectly made-up face on the screen and the sordid photos below. Her little love story. Make sure the editor-in-chief of her magazine gets a sneak preview, and provide him with the wife's contact information as well. Editor's email and the wife's cell number are confirmed. The package will be delivered in 1 hour. One by one, the orders were issued, clear, cold, and precise. There was no angry roaring, no emotional outburst, just the methodical execution of a demolition. The rest of them, use the weaknesses in their files and deal with them accordingly. Ethan concluded, his voice laced with the detached authority of a puppeteer. "I want them to fully understand the meaning of the phrase, loose lips sink ships within 3 days. Understood. Mission will be completed." The call ended. Ethan placed the burner phone back in a deep drawer. He stood up, walked to the bar, and poured a glass of strong whiskey. The amber liquid swirled, reflecting the cold light. He didn't drink it. He just held the glass and returned to the window. The city's noise was muffled by the thick glass, reduced to a dull hum. He watched the ant-like flow of cars and people below, his expression unreadable. The gears of revenge had begun their cold, grinding turn. The first drop of blood would be spilled soon. He raised his glass to the silent cityscape in a mock toast. To destruction. Greg Peterson was jolted awake by a frantic pounding on his door, so loud it sounded like it might break the hinges. His head throbbed with a vicious hangover. Cursing, he stumbled out of his messy bed, threw on a robe, and shuffled to the door. "Who the hell is it? Is someone dying?" he grumbled, yanking the door open. It wasn't a grim reaper, but it was worse. It was Lou from his company's finance department, his face pale as a ghost, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Peterson, it's bad. It's really bad. Lou's voice was trembling so hard he could barely speak. He practically fell into the apartment. What are you freaking out about? Did the sky fall? Greg snapped, trying to sound authoritative, but a muscle in his eyelid had started to twitch violently. The sky is falling. Lou was on the verge of tears, his words a jumbled mess. The IRS and the bank. They showed up first thing this morning. With a warrant. They sealed off the finance office. And your office. All of it. They said they got an anonymous tip that our company is involved in embezzlement and loan fraud. What? Greg felt a chill shoot up from his feet to the top of his head. The world went black for a second, and he staggered, grabbing the doorframe for support. Who tipped them off? That's bullshit. Before he could finish, his cell phone started ringing wildly. It was his wife. The moment he answered, her shrill, hysterical screaming exploded from the speaker. Greg Peterson, you son of a bitch. What the hell have you been doing? The debt collectors are at our front door. They look like thugs. They said if you don't pay up, they're going to break your legs. And they have. They have your gambling markers from Vegas. Millions, Greg. What are we supposed to do? What about the kids? Wow. Greg's hand went limp. The phone clattered to the floor, the screen shattering. He felt as if his bones had turned to liquid, and he slid down the doorframe to the cold floor, shaking uncontrollably. It's over. It's all over. The embezzled money. The gambling debts. How? How could it all blow up at once? Who did this? Who the hell did this? Meanwhile, in an affluent suburb on the other side of the city, Laura Jennings was admiring herself in the mirror, happily dabbing expensive serum on her face while planning which friend to meet for a spa afternoon. The doorbell rang. Thinking it was her friend, she hummed a little tune as she went to answer it. Standing outside were two men in dark jackets, their expressions grim. Mrs. Laura Jennings, the lead man said, flashing a badge. We're from the city's Department of Investigation. We have a few questions for your husband, Director Jennings, and for you. We need you to cooperate. The smile froze on Laura's face. The bottle of serum slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, the pricey liquid pooling around her feet. She stared at the photos they held out, clear pictures of the designer bags, the jewelry, and photocopies of the gift cards she had accepted. They were even annotated with the names of the gift givers and the dates. This isn't. Her lips trembled. She wanted to deny it, but no words came out. A tidal wave of pure terror washed over her. Please come with us. The investigator's voice was cold, unyielding. Laura's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the cold tile of the foyer. Her carefully made-up face was instantly drained of color, leaving only a deathly, hopeless gray. In Kevin Miller's small ad agency, it was chaos. He had just turned on his computer when the door to his office was thrown open by several uniformed officers from the IRS and the city's Consumer Protection Agency. Kevin Miller? We're a joint task force. We received a detailed tip that your company has engaged in long-term tax evasion and fraudulent advertising. We are here to seize all of your company's financial records, computers, and business materials for investigation. Please cooperate. Kevin was stunned. A cold sweat broke out all over his body. Officers, there must be some mistake. We're a small business. We'll find out if it's a mistake after we investigate. The lead officer was stone-faced. He waved a hand. Seize everything. His team moved forward, efficiently slapping evidence tape on file cabinets and unplugging computer towers. Kevin paced frantically, wanting to stop them, but not daring to. Just then, his personal cell phone, lying on the desk, began vibrating violently. The screen showed it was his wife calling. He had barely answered when her hysterical, screaming curses echoed through the chaotic office. Kevin Miller, you sick bastard. You pig. The disgusting things you kept on your computer. Those upskirt photos and videos. Someone sent them everywhere. They're all over the internet. They sent them to my phone, to our family group chat, even to our daughter's school parent group. How am I supposed to show my face? How is she? I want a divorce. Right now. You pervert. You scum. Kevin froze as if struck by lightning, the phone dropping from his hand for the second time. He could feel the eyes of every officer, every employee drilling into him, filled with disgust and contempt. It's over. It's all over. Utterly ruined. The words just spun in his head. Megan Shaw's downfall was more elegant, but just as fatal. She was in a magazine's break room, holding a delicate coffee cup, laughing with colleagues, and basking in their admiring glances. The editor-in-chief's assistant walked over, her face a blank mask. Megan, the EIC wants to see you in his office. Now. A knot of anxiety tightened in Megan's stomach but she maintained her professional smile and walked into the spacious, brightly lit office. The editor-in-chief sat behind his massive desk, his face so dark it looked like a thundercloud. He didn't speak. He just turned his laptop screen toward her. On the screen were pictures of her and her married lover in various hotel rooms and his car. Intimate graphic photos. There were even screenshots of their explicit text messages. The sender of the email was the man's wife. Megan. The editor's voice was ice, laced with undisguised revulsion. Care to explain? The reputation of this magazine cannot accommodate this kind of colorful personal life. You're fired. Clean out your desk and get out. Now, security will assist you. The blood drained from Megan's face. The coffee cup slipped from her grasp, landing with a soft thud on the plush carpet, a brown stain spreading rapidly. Her mouth hung open, but no sound came out. A tidal wave of shame and terror drowned her. She could feel the curious, gossiping, contemptuous stares of her colleagues from just outside the door. In a single morning, in different corners of New York City, the faces that had been the loudest, the ones who had laughed with the most malice in that karaoke room, all met their darkest hour. Bankruptcy, unemployment, public ruin, broken families, jail time. Ethan's plan was a volley of precision-guided missiles. Not a single one missed its target. And at that very moment, Ethan was sitting in a private room at one of the city's top restaurants. The floor-to-ceiling window offered a stunning view of the bustling streets below. Across from him sat a well-dressed, distinguished middle-aged man, Mr. Chun, CEO of Horizon Global, the biggest raw material supplier for Vivian's father, Mark Hayes. The atmosphere was cordial. Exquisite dishes filled the air with an enticing aroma. Ethan wore the perfect, business-appropriate smile as he raised his glass. Mr. Chun, that new energy materials project we discussed has enormous potential. Apex Capital is very interested in getting deeply involved. Funding and distribution channels are not an issue. Mr. Chun's eyes lit up. He immediately raised his glass. Mr. Cole, your foresight is remarkable. To partner with Apex would be an honor for us. Once this project gets off the ground, it will be a win-win for everyone. A win-win is guaranteed, Ethan said, taking a sip of wine. He set his glass down, his tone shifting seamlessly, laced with a hint of carefully crafted concern. But Mr. Chun, on a personal note, there's something I feel I should mention. Oh, please go on. Mr. Chun looked serious. I've heard, Ethan lowered his voice, adopting a confidential, sincere tone, that you and Mr. Hayes from Hayes Industries have been working together for many years. Yes, we go way back, Mr. Chun nodded. And old friendships require the most caution, Ethan sighed, tapping a finger lightly on the table. Lately, the rumors haven't been good. I hear Mr. Hayes' capital chain is stretched dangerously thin. Apparently, he's been diverting supplier prepayments from key projects to plug other holes. The amounts are not small. It's just hearsay, of course, but where there's smoke, there's fire. In this sensitive economic climate, if, and I'm just saying if, his company goes under, you'd be the first to feel the impact. The losses would be catastrophic. The color drained from Mr. Chun's face. In business, news about a company's cash flow, especially something as fatal as misappropriating prepayments, was a bombshell. He frowned deeply. Mr. Cole, is this information reliable? I just overheard a few friends at the banks talking about how Mr. Hayes has been desperately trying to secure short-term loans, Ethan said, not answering directly, but looking at Mr. Chun with a meaningful expression. You're a well-connected man, Mr. Chun. Perhaps it would be wise to do a little digging yourself? Better to be safe than sorry. With our own partnership on the horizon, I'd hate to see any unforeseen complications on your end that could affect the bigger picture. Mr. Chun's expression grew heavy. He was silent for a few seconds, then raised his glass with renewed gravity. Thank you for the warning, Mr. Cole. I owe you one. I'll have my people look into this immediately. Of course, Ethan said, raising his own glass. His face still wore that calm, reliable smile, but deep in his eyes, there was only a frozen lake. The glasses clinked together, a crisp, clean sound. The lifeline of Mark Hayes' company had just been rigged with a powerful, silent explosive. Ethan put down his glass and looked out the window. The city was bathed in sunlight, the traffic a vibrant, flowing river. A perfect, prosperous scene. The overture to a grand collapse had just begun, and the trader would soon be able to hear its beautiful melody. Vivian returned home in a daze. The days since the reunion had been a waking nightmare she couldn't escape. The video circulating on her phone was like a red-hot poker, searing her nerves. She didn't dare open any social media, answer unknown numbers, or even leave the house. Ethan hadn't come back since that night. He didn't answer her calls or reply to her texts. The enormous house felt as cold and empty as a tomb. She was curled up on the expensive leather sofa in the living room, still wearing the wrinkled, wine-stained dress from the reunion. Her hair was a mess, her face pale, the dark circles under her eyes deep and bruised. The food on the coffee table had long gone cold, untouched. Her phone lit up again. It was Laura Jennings. Vivian flinched as if pricked by a needle. She snatched the phone, her fingers trembling, and finally answered. She needed to hear a voice, any voice, even an angry one, to break the suffocating silence. "Hello, Laura." Her voice was dry and raspy. "Vivian." The voice that answered wasn't Laura's. It was her husband, Director Jennings, roaring with absolute fury. "You goddamn jinx. You've ruined us. How dare you answer this phone?" Vivian flinched, nearly dropping the phone. Mr. Jennings? What happened? Where's Laura?" "Laura? She's being questioned by the DOI because of you. It's all your fault. Your stupid reunion. That goddamn game you played. And now everything she ever accepted has been exposed. My career. My future. It's all gone. Because of your big mouth. You witch. Why don't you just go die?" I don't know. What happened?" Vivian was terrified, stammering, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't know? You think saying you don't know fixes anything? I'm telling you, Vivian, if my family goes down for this, I'm coming for you. You just wait." He snarled the words and slammed the phone down. Vivian held the dead phone, a chill seeping into her bones. Laura, questioned by the DOI? For taking gifts? How could it be such a coincidence? Right after the reunion, before she could process the shock, her phone buzzed violently again. This time it was Greg Peterson. Hesitantly, she answered. "Vivian, my dear friend Vivian, you really are something else, aren't you?" Greg's voice was hoarse, filled with a crazed desperation. The background was a cacophony of crashing sounds and a woman's sobs. "My company's been shut down. The IRS and the bank are all over me. Collectors are at my door, threatening to break my legs. My wife is leaving me. My life is destroyed. Are you happy now? Was it you? Was it your precious husband, Ethan? All because I cracked a few jokes at a reunion? Huh? Greg, I don't know." Vivian sobbed, shaking her head frantically. "Don't know? Don't give me that crap." Greg screamed. "Who else could it be? Is it just a coincidence that everyone who gave you a hard time is suddenly getting wiped out, one by one? Laura's husband is under investigation. That creep Kevin Miller got exposed for his upskirt photos, his wife's divorcing him, and his business is toast. Megan Shaw got fired, and her lover's wife beat her up in the street. Now it's my turn. Who's next? You, Vivian? You think you're getting away with this? You and your husband are sick. You'll both burn in hell." Greg's hysterical curses felt like venomous snakes slithering into her ears. She couldn't take it anymore. With a raw scream, she threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack, the screen shattering, the voice silenced. She hugged her head, curled up on the sofa, and wept uncontrollably. Fear, cold and suffocating, wrapped around her heart like a vine, squeezing tighter and tighter. Greg's words echoed in her mind. "Everyone who gave you a hard time. Wiped out, one by one. It was Ethan. It had to be him. He knew. He knew everything. This was his revenge. Cold, calculated, and absolute." A tidal wave of panic washed over her. What was she going to do? What would Ethan do to her? She pictured his deep, bottomless, merciless eyes, and her body began to shake violently. No, she couldn't just sit here and wait. She had to go home, to her parents. Her dad would know what to do. He knew so many people. He could talk to Ethan. He could make him stop. The thought was a lifeline. Vivian shot up from the sofa. Without changing or even brushing her hair, she grabbed her car keys and stumbled out of the suffocating, terrifying mansion. Racing down the highway, Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs. Her mind was a chaotic storm of Greg's desperate screams, Director Jennings's venomous curses, and Ethan's cold, impassive face. All she wanted was to fall into her parents' arms, to find some shred of safety and comfort. Her car screeched into the quiet, manicured cul-de-sac where her parents lived. Vivian practically fell out of the vehicle, stumbling to the front door and pounding on the heavy oak panel. "Dad! Mom! Open up! It's me!" "Vivian!" she cried, her voice choked with tears. The door opened. It wasn't the housekeeper. It was her mother, Carol Hayes. Her mother's face was a mask Vivian had never seen before. Ashen gray, her eyes filled with shock, disappointment, and something else. Fear. "Mom!" Vivian saw her as a savior, lunging forward to embrace her. Crack! A sharp, ringing slap landed squarely across Vivian's face. The force of it sent black spots dancing in her vision. Her ears rang. She staggered back, clutching her cheek, staring at her mother in disbelief. Mom, you hit me. Tears streamed down her face, half from the sting, half from a profound sense of shock and betrayal. Hit you? I wish I could kill you, you wretched girl. Carol's voice was a shrill shriek. She was trembling all over, pointing a shaking finger at Vivian. You have the nerve to come back here? Look what you've done. Look what you've done to this family. What? What'd I do? Vivian whispered, completely lost. What did you do? A furious, wounded roar erupted from the living room. Her father, Mark Hayes, stormed out. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, his suit wrinkled. The usually calm, polished businessman was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. He lunged at Vivian, his hand raised to strike again, but Carol grabbed his arm. Mark, no, don't. We could talk about this. Carol sobbed. Talk? There's nothing to say to this curse. Mark was shaking with rage. He jabbed a finger in Vivian's face, spittle flying. You and your wonderful husband, Ethan Cole. He's ruthless. And it's because of you. Because you acted like a tramp at your reunion, playing some stupid game, spouting some worthless truth. Dad, Vivian tried to explain. Shut up. Mark's voice was raw with a fury born of terror. Horizon Global, our biggest supplier. Just now, they called and canceled everything. All our orders. Froze all our prepayments. They're demanding we settle all our outstanding accounts immediately, or they'll sue. Do you have any idea what that means? Huh. His voice cracked, rising into a desperate cry. It means the capital chain for Hayes Industries is broken. Gone. The banks suddenly tightened our credit. They're calling in our loans. Our biggest clients heard the rumors and are pulling their contracts. It's over. Everything is over. The company I spent 20 years building is going to be destroyed because of you, you ungrateful brat. It was like being struck by lightning. Vivian froze, her hand falling limply to her side. The burning pain on her cheek was nothing compared to the agony ripping through her heart. She looked at her father's face, aged 10 years in an instant, at her mother's eyes, filled with bottomless despair and resentment. An overwhelming sense of horror and absurdity consumed her. Ethan, he hadn't just ruined her classmates. He was destroying her family, her parents, everything. No, it's not like that. Dad, Mom, let me explain. I'll go to him. I'll beg Ethan. Vivian babbled, tears blurring her vision as she reached for her father's arm. Get off me. Mark shoved her away with such force that she fell to the ground. He loomed over her, his eyes, once so loving, now filled with nothing but cold disgust and towering hatred. Beg him? Go ahead. See if he'll spare us. See if one word from you will save the Hayes family. Mark's voice was like ice, every word a poison-tipped dagger stabbing in her heart. Vivian, I'm telling you now, from this day on, you are not my daughter. You brought this disaster on us. You deal with it yourself. Don't drag us down with you. Get out. Get out of my house. And never come back. Dad, Mom, please. Vivian pleaded from the floor, crying hysterically, reaching for their legs. Carol turned away, silent tears streaming down her face, refusing to look at her. Mark spun around and yelled at the housekeeper who had come running. What are you standing there for? Drag her out of here, and don't you ever let her in this house again. The two housekeepers exchanged a nervous glance before stepping forward. They grabbed Vivian, who was sobbing too hard to stand, and despite her struggles and cries, dragged her out the front door. Boom! The heavy oak door slammed shut behind her, a final, absolute sound. It was the sound that severed her from the only home she had ever known. It was the sound that shattered her last glimmer of hope. Vivian was left on the cold stone steps like a piece of trash. She curled into a ball, her body racked with shivers, her tears spent, leaving only a hollow void of despair and bone-deep terror. She looked up at the gray, unforgiving sky and understood, for the first time, what it truly meant to be damned. The slam of the front door echoed in Vivian's empty mind like the tolling of a funeral bell. The cold stone steps bit into her flesh, and the late autumn wind sliced through her thin dress like 1,000 tiny knives, chilling her to the bone. She huddled there, motionless, a hollow shell from which the soul had been ripped. The tears had dried, leaving only the fiery sting of her mother's slap and the deeper, colder burn of her father's hatred. Her home, gone. Her parents had abandoned her. Her so-called friends were now either ruined or gloating, their doors closed to her. The world had become a vast, silent, frozen expanse. And the architect of it all was one man, Ethan. Fear, a cold serpent, coiled around her heart, squeezing until she couldn't breathe. What would he do to her now? Ruin her like Greg and Laura? Destroy her reputation? Or, like her father, would he simply annihilate everything she had ever touched? She didn't know. She only knew that he was capable of it, and that he would be far more ruthless with her. An eternity passed in minutes. A sleek, all-black sedan, silent as a phantom, glided to a stop by the curb outside her parents' house. A door opened. A man in a dark suit, powerfully built and with a face devoid of expression, stepped out first, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Then the other rear door opened. Ethan emerged. He wore a perfectly tailored, dark gray cashmere overcoat that accentuated his tall, lean frame. His face was a placid mask, as still and deep as a frozen lake. He didn't even glance at the crumpled figure on the steps. His gaze went straight to the closed oak door, the very symbol of her exile, and a flicker of something close to mockery crossed his eyes. He started up the steps, his stride long and steady. The sound of his leather shoes on the cold stone, a crisp and rhythmic thud, was like a death knell hammering on Vivian's heart. The moment he drew near, a violent tremor seized her body. She was the last leaf clinging to a branch in a winter storm. She instinctively tried to shrink back, to hide, but the cold wall and the locked door left her no escape. She could only stare at the ground, her hair a tangled mess, as if not looking at him could somehow stave off the judgment to come. Ethan stopped in front of her. His tall frame cast a cold shadow over her, an invisible, crushing weight. She could smell the familiar, crisp scent of his aftershave, a scent that now filled her with a primal terror. "Get up." Ethan's voice was flat, without inflection, as if giving a trivial command. Vivian's body jerked. Fear had paralyzed her. She struggled, scrambling awkwardly to her feet, her legs so weak they could barely hold her. She kept her head bowed, her matted hair hiding her pale, tear-streaked face. "Look at me." 2 more cold words. It felt as if an invisible hand were squeezing her heart. It took all the strength she had to slowly, painfully lift her head. Her eyes met his. They were deep, cold, like 2 pools of ancient, unmeltable ice. There was no anger, no sadness, not a trace of the emotion she had braced herself for. There was only a pure, detached coldness, the look one gives an inanimate object. His gaze was a scalpel, surgically dissecting her misery, her fear, her pathetic state. In that moment, Vivian felt as if she were stripped bare, standing naked in a blizzard, her very soul shivering under his inspection. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, to beg, to explain, but her throat felt frozen solid. Ethan's gaze lingered for a second on her swollen cheek and her hollow, desperate eyes. It was the look of someone assessing the damage to a piece of property. Then he looked away, as if the sight of her was distasteful. He didn't speak again. He just gave a slight nod to the man in the black suit standing behind him. The man stepped forward and efficiently retrieved a thin, unmarked manila envelope from his briefcase. He held it out to Vivian with both hands. Vivian stared at the envelope, her pupils contracting. A terrible premonition, a cold tide, swept over her. "Take it." Ethan's voice was a command. Her hand trembled as she reached out. Her fingers were so cold she could barely grasp the light envelope. It felt less like paper and more like a branding iron. "Open it," Ethan said, his voice the final pronouncement of a judge. Her fingers shook too much to tear the simple seal. Clumsily, frantically, she ripped it open and pulled out a few sheets of paper. At the top of the first page, in bold, black letters, were the words, "Divorce Agreement." Below were lines of dense, legal text. Vivian's eyes were drawn, as if by a magnet, to the section on asset division. The division of marital property is as follows. Party A, Ethan Cole, shall receive the property located at XX Park Avenue. Market value approximate $20 million. The penthouse duplex at XX Tower. Market value approximate $12 million. The 3rd floor of the XX building, Est. Value $40 million. 70% equity in XX Tech Corp, Est. Value $150 million. All shares in XX Investment Fund, Est. Value $80 million, as well as all bank deposits, stocks, bonds, vehicles, and all other real and personal property held in Party A's name. Party B, Vivian Hayes, shall receive her premarital savings, approximate $42,000, and personal clothing and jewelry, not to exceed a value of $75,000. Party B voluntarily waives all claims to any other marital assets. Party B must vacate all properties owned by Party A within 3 days of the agreement taking effect. To walk away with nothing. The words weren't written, but they burned across the page like a brand, searing themselves onto her retinas, into her soul. Her entire life of luxury, her proud status as Mrs. Cole, the bottomless well of money she had taken for granted. All of it, stripped away by a few sheets of paper. All she had left was a pathetic sum that wouldn't even buy one of her old handbags. No, no. Vivian finally found her voice, a broken, desperate whisper. She looked up at Ethan, fresh tears streaming down her face. Ethan, you can't. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I was drunk. They pressured me. I didn't mean it. Please, for the years we had together, don't do this to me. She sobbed, reaching out to grab his sleeve, her last, desperate anchor in a raging storm. The instant her hand came close, Ethan sidestepped, a subtle movement filled with undisguised revulsion. His expression never wavered, untouched by her tears or her pleading. The years we had? Ethan finally spoke, his voice low but sharp as an icicle. Vivian, the moment you nodded your head to that name, the only thing left between us was a balance sheet. He leaned in, his face close to hers. It should have been an intimate gesture, but it only filled her with a bone-deep chill. His cold breath brushed against her ear, his voice a low, cruel murmur. Sign it. It's your only choice. He paused, his gaze flicking to the closed door of her parents' house behind her. A faint, cold smile touched his lips. Or would you rather watch your father's company turn into a worthless pile of ash? Watch your parents end up on the street? Vivian went rigid, as if struck by lightning. Her last shred of hope was crushed into dust. She looked into his deep, emotionless eyes and finally, completely understood. Begging, crying, explaining. It was all useless. He was no longer her husband. He was her judge, jury, and executioner. All her struggles were just a pathetic sideshow. Overwhelming despair and cold terror finally gave way to a numb resignation. She bowed her head, her gaze falling on the divorce agreement, her own death warrant. Fat tears dripped onto the signature line for Party B, Vivian Hayes, instantly blurring the ink. The man in the suit silently offered her a pen. Vivian reached out with a cold, stiff hand and took the heavy instrument. The tip hovered over the line, shaking violently, as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Ethan stood by, a patient hunter watching his prey thrash in the trap. His eyes were cold and calm, without a hint of urgency or impatience. But beneath that calm was a frost that could freeze hell over. Time ticked by in the dead silence. Finally, as if her last ounce of strength had given out, Vivian's wrist fell. The nib scratched across the paper, a sound like life itself being torn apart. The name Vivian Hayes, crooked and smeared with tears, was a brand of shame on the document that sealed her fate. The pen slipped from her numb fingers, clattering on the stone steps. Ethan's eyes fell on the fresh, tear-stained signature. His face remained a mask, but deep in his eyes, something flickered, a cold, almost imperceptible glint, like a stone dropped into a frozen lake, rippling into an even deeper cold. He held out his hand. The man in the suit handed him an identical copy of the agreement. Ethan flipped to the last page. He took out his own pen, an expensive, custom-made fountain pen whose nib glinted in the weak light. He leaned down, using the very step Vivian had just signed on as a surface, and braced the document on his knee. His movements were unhurried, almost elegant. The nib touched the paper. Ethan Cole. The signature was forceful, sharp, a testament to his absolute, decisive control. He straightened up and handed the signed agreement back to the man, the entire process smooth and efficient. He didn't look at Vivian again. Handle the rest. Ethan's voice was flat, as if he had just concluded a routine business transaction. Yes, Mr. Cole. The man accepted the documents respectfully and put them away. Ethan cast one last look at the locked door of the Hayes house, then at the broken woman slumped on the steps. His gaze lingered on her for less than a second, the way one might glance at a piece of trash on the sidewalk. Then he turned. The hem of his gray coat swung in a hard, clean arc. He walked down the steps, one by one, toward the black sedan that waited like an armored beast. The sound of his shoes on the stone was still clear, still rhythmic. Thud, thud, thud. Each step landed on Vivian's shattered heart, a final pronouncement that her world had ended. The car door opened. He ducked inside. The man in the suit quickly got into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life, a low, powerful growl. The black sedan, just as silently as it had arrived, slipped into the flow of traffic and vanished down the street, leaving Vivian alone, huddled on the cold stone steps, with the divorce papers that had cast her into hell and the family door that would forever be closed to her. The late autumn wind stirred, sending a few dead leaves skittering across the ground. They settled in her tangled hair and on her thin shoulders. The world was utterly silent. The black sedan merged silently with the city traffic, leaving Vivian and the ruins of her world behind. Inside the car, the scent of sandalwood and cold leather created a sealed-off chamber, insulated from the noise and chill outside. Ethan leaned back against the plush seat, eyes closed, his thumb unconsciously tracing the faint indentation on his ring finger. A wedding band, a symbol of commitment, had once occupied that space. Now only a pale, barely visible mark remained. His phone vibrated in his suit pocket, breaking the silence. Ethan opened his eyes, his mind clear, showing no emotional residue from the act of signing away his marriage. The screen displayed the encrypted number. He answered. Mr. Cole. The voice on the other end was steady as ever. We have a final update on Greg Peterson. Go on. Ethan's voice was unreadable. The evidence for his embezzlement has been fully corroborated. The Joint Task Force from the bank and the IRS officially opened a criminal case this morning. Peterson himself, upon hearing the news, had a complete breakdown. He jumped from the roof of his office building. He was dead on arrival. Ethan's eyebrow twitched, an almost imperceptible movement, like a pebble dropped into a still pond. The surface immediately returned to its dead calm. Understood, he replied coolly, as if hearing a minor news report. What about the others? Director Jennings has been taken into custody by the DOI, and his wife Laura has been arrested for complicity in bribery. Kevin Miller's company has been shuttered. He's been charged with tax evasion and distribution of obscene materials and is currently in jail. His wife filed for divorce this morning. Megan Shaw was fired, and her lover's wife attacked her in public. The video is all over the internet. Her reputation is destroyed, and she's been blacklisted from the industry. The others who made a scene have all been dealt with as planned. Bankruptcies, job losses, all of it is done. Ethan grunted, his gaze fixed on the cityscape rushing past the window. The city's lights began to flicker on in the twilight, a river of golden light, but their reflection in his dark eyes stirred nothing. And Mark Hayes. Horizon Global has sent a formal notice terminating all contracts, freezing prepayments, and demanding settlement of all outstanding debts. The banks have officially called in their loans. Hearing the news, several of Hayes Industries' key clients have moved to cancel their contracts. His company's stock plummeted the moment the market opened. His capital chain is completely broken. Bankruptcy and liquidation are now just a matter of time. Good. A faint, cold smile finally touched Ethan's lips, like a chill wind sweeping across a frozen plain. Keep an eye on him. Make sure. There is no possibility of a comeback. Understood. The call ended. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket, the cold metal a familiar sensation against his fingertips. The news of Greg Peterson's death had been a stone dropped into a deep well, causing a brief ripple before sinking into the abyss. That faint disturbance wasn't even pleasure. It was more like a final confirmation, an axiom proven. Traders pay a price. That was all. He felt no pity for the demise of an insect, no thrill at having crushed an ant. It was just one part of the accounting, a scene in a pre-written script playing out exactly as planned. The car pulled smoothly into the underground garage of a top-tier hotel downtown. A private elevator ascended silently to the presidential suite on the top floor. The heavy door closed behind him, sealing out the world. Through the immense window, the city's most brilliant jewels were spread out below, a galaxy of light. Ethan shrugged off his overcoat, draping it over the arm of the sofa. He went to the bar and poured himself a glass of aged single-malt scotch, the amber liquid swirling around a single large ice cube. He didn't turn on the lights, letting the shifting city glow slice through the darkness of the room. He took his drink to the window, looking down at the concrete jungle built on money and power. His phone lit up again. It was a routine daily email from his assistant. He tapped it open and scanned through the items. One line caught his eye. A high-end couture boutique in Soho, a place Vivian had loved before they were married and frequented often after, was failing and seeking an investor or a buyout. Ethan's eyes lingered on the text for a few seconds. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. It's me. His voice echoed slightly in the vast, empty suite. The boutique in Soho, Elon. Look into its financials and valuation. Right away, Mr. Cole. The assistant's voice was prompt. It's a high-end shop, but their sales have been declining for years. They have a high debt-to-equity ratio, and the owner is desperate to sell. A rough estimate, probably around $2 million. Buy it, Ethan said without hesitation, his tone as casual as if ordering a coffee. Use the offshore holding company. Get the price down to 1.5. As soon as the deal closes, liquidate it. Everything, inventory, samples, design sketches, destroy it all. Lease the retail space to a fast food chain. There was a brief pause on the other end. The assistant was clearly taken aback by the sudden, overtly destructive command, but professionalism quickly took over. Understood, Mr. Cole. I'll get it done immediately. Ethan ended the call and downed the cold scotch in one swallow. The burn in his throat did little to warm the frozen desert in his chest. Destroying the things Vivian loved was like erasing the memory of her existence. This wasn't about anger. It was a ritual, a final, merciless farewell to the past. The thought of those gowns, the symbols of her vanity and pleasure, being shredded into confetti, the thought of that elegant space she adored being filled with the smell of cheap, greasy food. It was a form of silent, slow torture. He didn't need to see her current state to imagine the feeling of being uprooted, of having even the last vestiges of her former life pulverized. And that imagined despair, like cold alcohol, sent a numb, chilling satisfaction through him. He walked to the full-length mirror. The man in the reflection was tall, sharp, his eyes deep and commanding, a man who controlled a vast fortune and the fates of countless people. He was still Ethan Cole, the man at the top of the pyramid. But deep in the reflection's eyes, something was burning silently in the abyss, a cold, pure fire. It was what was left after the flames of revenge had died down, cold, hard ash. And beneath that ash, the absolute power to create and destroy brought a unique, chilling pleasure. He raised his empty glass to the man in the mirror, a toast to the revelry of the embers. The wind felt like 1,000 tiny needles, piercing through the thin cashmere of Vivian's coat and sinking into her bones. She dragged a small, cheap suitcase, standing lost at a busy intersection. Neon lights flashed across the indifferent faces of the rushing crowd. The city was as loud and alive as ever, but there was no longer a single inch of it that belonged to her. The papers were signed. She couldn't go home. Her parents treated her like a plague. Her former friends either ignored her calls or answered with cold excuses and thinly veiled contempt. Ethan, the name itself was a brand. Just thinking it sent a tremor of pure terror through her. She was a ghost, utterly alone. The $42,000 in her bank account, her personal property, was a cruel joke to someone who once thought nothing of spending that on a single purse. She needed a place to stay. She needed to survive. She ended up in a cheap rental in a gritty, rundown neighborhood in the Bronx. The narrow hallway of the walk-up smelled of grease and mildew. The room was barely 100 square feet, with a squeaking metal bed frame, a peeling desk, and a foul-smelling shared bathroom down the hall. This was her home now. Dropping her suitcase, Vivian sank onto the cold edge of the bed. She looked around the cramped, dirty space, a place that reeked of poverty, and the chasm between her past and present felt like a physical hand closing around her throat. Just months ago, she was sleeping in a king-size bed in a Park Avenue mansion with heated floors and a closet overflowing with designer clothes. Now, she was shivering on a mildewed cot in a room with no heat. Humiliation, resentment, hatred, and a bone-deep fear gnawed at her heart like rats. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, landing on the rough blanket. She hated Ethan for his cruelty. She hated her classmates for their malice. And most of all, she hated herself for her weakness and stupidity that night. Crying won't help, she muttered, roughly wiping the tears away, her nails scratching her skin. Survive. She had to survive. She still had some money. She had to find a way. She pulled out her phone, the screen a spiderweb of cracks. She started blasting her resume out on job sites. With a degree from a good university and a polished and heavily edited resume that omitted her time as Mrs. Cole, she quickly landed a few interviews. Reality, however, delivered another brutal blow. The first was for a marketing manager position at a decent-sized ad agency. The interviewer was a man in his 40s with greasy hair and eyes that roamed all over her body. When he saw the refined features and innate poise that even her current state couldn't completely hide, his gaze grew bolder. Ms. Hayes, you have very impressive qualifications, he said, pushing his glasses up his nose, his smile oily. But this is a high-pressure role. It often involves entertaining clients late into the night. A beautiful woman like you must be very good at networking, right? His hand moved, as if by accident, to cover hers on the table. Vivian recoiled as if bitten by a snake, her face paling. Nausea churned in her stomach. I'm sorry, I don't think this job is for me. She grabbed her bag and practically ran from the office, the sound of his dismissive laughter following her out. The second was for an art consultant at New Gallery. The owner was an elegant, intellectual woman. The interview went well. She seemed impressed with Vivian's knowledge and demeanor. Your resume is excellent, Ms. Hayes, and your personal style fits our gallery perfectly, the owner said with a smile, before her tone shifted. However, I believe I saw something about you online. Some unpleasant rumors? Something about a college reunion? And Ethan Cole of Apex Capital, her eyes were probing, with an undercurrent of disdain. Vivian's heart sank. Her blood ran cold. She opened her mouth to explain, but what could she say? The video and the scorched earth campaign of Ethan's revenge had left no room for denial. She watched the admiration in the owner's eyes curdle into suspicion and distance. I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes, I think we need to reconsider, the owner said coolly. Vivian didn't know how she managed to walk out of that chic gallery. The autumn sun was bright, but she felt no warmth, only a piercing chill. Ethan's shadow was everywhere. He hadn't just taken her wealth and status. He had blocked every path she might take to earn a living. He wanted her to be a rat in a sewer, struggling in filth and contempt. Overwhelmed by despair and rage, she walked aimlessly until she found herself in front of a luxury department store she used to frequent. In the grand window display, mannequins wore the latest couture, bathed in brilliant light. Once, she was a VIP here, greeted by fawning staff who would bring the newest arrivals to her private suite. Now, she stood in the cold in a worn-out coat, a pathetic beggar peering through the glass at a world that no longer belonged to her. Her reflection showed a pale, haggard face, messy hair, and eyes filled with bottomless despair and venom. The hell are you looking at? If you can't afford it, get out of the way. A well-dressed woman carrying a designer bag snapped, shoving Vivian's shoulder as she passed. Vivian stumbled, nearly falling. She bit her lip so hard she tasted blood to keep the humiliating tears from falling. Survive. I have to survive, even if it's like an ant. A few days later, with her cash almost gone and every resume ignored, Vivian finally found a job. The night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. The pay was pathetic. Her hours were 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The fluorescent lights of the store were harsh and white, the air thick with the smell of the hot dog roller and cheap cigarettes. Vivian stood behind the counter in an ill-fitting, branded smock, her movements clumsy. She had never worked a job like this. Scanning items, taking cash, making change. Every simple action felt foreign and awkward. Hey, hurry it up. What's taking so long? A drunk man slurred, slamming a six-pack of beer on the counter. Vivian fumbled with the scanner, her hands shaking. Sorry, sir. That'll be $12.50. Jesus, you're slow, the man grumbled, tossing a wad of cash on the counter. Vivian kept her head down, fighting back nausea and the sting in her eyes as she carefully counted the money and made change. She could feel the stares of the other customers, judging and dismissive. She was once the untouchable Mrs. Cole. Now she had to endure the insults of drunks and the pitying looks of strangers. At 3 a.m., the store was quiet. Vivian leaned against a cold shelf, exhausted. Just then, the automatic door slid open, letting in a gust of frigid air. Welcome to, Vivian began out of habit, but the words caught in her throat. Two young women, impeccably dressed in designer coats and flawless makeup, walked in. Vivian knew one of them. Her name was Nicole, a hanger-on from her old social circle who used to flatter her endlessly. Nicole recognized her too. She froze for a second. Then her face broke into an exaggerated, malicious grin. Well, look what we have here. Nicole's voice was high and sharp in the quiet store. If it isn't the fabulous Mrs. Cole. Oh, wait, my mistake. She covered her mouth in a parody of shock. Silly me. I guess it's just Ms. Hayes now. Or should I say, Miss Convenience Store Clerk. Her friend snickered, eyeing Vivian with undisguised contempt. Vivian's face flushed crimson, then turned deathly pale. She wished the floor would swallow her whole. The shame was a physical blow. TSK, Nicole sashayed to the counter and picked up the most expensive bar of imported chocolate, waving it in front of Vivian's face. How the mighty have fallen. Didn't you used to have your skincare custom-made in Switzerland? How does it feel standing in this dump, smelling the hot dogs? She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. I heard your dad's company is about to go under too. It's karma, you know? For being such a smug bitch and humiliating Ethan Cole on video. You got exactly what you deserved. Every word was a poisoned knife twisting in her heart. Vivian's body trembled violently. She dug her nails into her palms, the pain barely stopping her from lunging across the counter and tearing that smug face apart. Ma'am, will there be anything else? Vivian's voice shook, the words squeezed from between clenched teeth. Oh, of course. Nicole tossed the chocolate on the counter and grabbed an armful of the most expensive snacks and drinks she could find. Here, ring me up, and be careful not to make a mistake. I don't think you can afford to cover the difference anymore. Vivian kept her head down, blinking back tears of humiliation as she scanned each item. She could feel their eyes on her, watching her like a zoo animal, dripping with malice. "That will be $84.52, she mumbled. Nicole slowly pulled out her wallet and began counting out $100 bills, one by one, an act of pure theater. "Oh, so sorry to make the hands that once wore massive diamonds touch our filthy cash." She slapped the bills on the counter. "Keep the change. Consider it a tip. I know how hard it is to serve people, right?" With that, she and her friend burst into loud, cruel laughter, grabbed their bags, and swept out of the store. The automatic door slid shut, closing out the biting wind and their mocking laughter. Vivian stood frozen, an ice sculpture of shame. She stared at the crumpled bills on the counter, at the pile of junk food, and the last of her defenses finally crumbled. She snatched the money, crushing it into a tight ball, and hurled it with all her might at the glass door. "Arg!" A raw, guttural scream, the cry of a wounded animal, tore from her throat, echoing in the cold, empty store. She collapsed to the floor, her back against a shelf, her body curled into a tight ball. Her shoulders shook violently, but no more sounds came out, only silent, hopeless tears streaming down her face, soaking the collar of her cheap uniform. The long, cold winter for an ant had just begun, and the fire of revenge, ignited by betrayal, had already scorched the earth where she once stood. Ethan Cole stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of his office at Apex Capital. Below him, the city sprawled out, its traffic flowing like golden arteries through the gray morning mist. He held a cup of black coffee, the steam blurring the hard line of his profile. A soft knock came at the door. "Enter," Ethan said without turning. His assistant walked in, calm and composed, and placed a folder on the vast desk. "Mr. Cole, the bankruptcy proceedings for Hayes Industries have begun. The court-appointed receiver will take control this morning. This is the final confirmed list of assets and debts." The assistant's voice was clear and steady. "The company is insolvent, with a significant deficit. All properties and vehicles under Mark and Carol Hayes' names, including some personal collections, will be liquidated." Ethan turned and walked to the desk. He picked up the folder. The paper felt cold. Inside were lists of properties and possessions that had once belonged to the Hayes family, now reduced to numbers on a balance sheet. He scanned the pages with the detached interest of someone reading a standard business report. "Good," he said, taking a sip of coffee. The bitter liquid slid down his throat. "Elon, is that taken care of?" "Yes, Mr. Cole," the assistant replied immediately. "The asset transfer was completed yesterday. As per your instructions, all inventory, gowns, samples, and design sketches, a total of 376 items, were taken to an industrial disposal facility at dawn this morning and physically shredded. The lease for the storefront has been signed with Burger Box. Their renovation crew will be on site next week." "Excellent." Ethan's fingertip tapped the smooth desk once. A crisp, clean sound. Erased. That was precisely the effect he wanted. The image of those beautiful gowns, symbols of Vivian's vanity, being torn to shreds by cold machinery. The image of that chic space she loved being overrun by the smell of greasy fast food and noisy crowds. A cold, satisfying current of absolute control coursed through him. The assistant hesitated for a moment. "Sir, there is one other thing. Regarding Miss Hayes." Ethan looked up, his expression unreadable, and gestured for him to continue. "She's currently working the night shift at a Good Neighbor convenience store in the Bronx. There was a minor incident yesterday." The assistant placed a brief report and a few grainy security camera stills on the desk. The images showed Vivian in her cheap uniform, head down behind the counter, facing two well-dressed, sneering women. It was Nicole Vance from her old social circle. She recognized Ms. Hayes and was verbally abusive. Ms. Hayes appeared to be quite distressed. Ethan's gaze swept over the blurry photos. Vivian's bowed head, her tense shoulders, her humiliation and despair were palpable even through the low-resolution images. His face remained a blank slate, but a flicker of detached understanding crossed his eyes. "I see," he said, his voice flat, as if hearing about a complete stranger. "Ignore it." "Yes, sir." The assistant nodded and left. He knew that from Mr. Cole. The name Vivian Hayes had been permanently archived, a symbol so irrelevant that even mentioning it was a waste of breath. Her struggles, her shame, her despair. They were nothing more than faint background noise at the end of a grand symphony of revenge. After the assistant left, the office returned to absolute silence. Ethan walked back to the window. The morning sun was breaking through the clouds, casting golden light on the city's skyscrapers, tracing their cold, hard edges. He picked up another folder from his desk. It contained the final, legally binding confirmation of his divorce, the last piece of paperwork severing their connection. All ties, legal and social, were now completely cut. He picked up a pen and, with swift, decisive strokes, signed his name where required. The scratching of a nib on the paper was the only sound in the room, like a gavel falling, pronouncing a final judgment on their shared history. After the last signature, Ethan put the pen down. He picked up the confirmation notice, his eyes lingering for a few seconds on the crooked, tear-stained signature of Vivian Hayes. Then, he walked to the large industrial shredder in the corner of his office. The machine hummed to life. Expressionless, he fed the confirmation document, along with every other copy Vivian had signed, into the shredder's sharp, waiting teeth. One page at a time, slowly, deliberately. Zzz. The paper was mercilessly torn into tiny, indecipherable white flecks, which rained down into the bin below. As he watched the documents that held their past, her betrayal, and her final, desperate submission turned to dust, the last signature, Ethan put the pen down. He picked up the confirmation notice, his eyes lingering for a few seconds on the crooked, tear-stained signature of Vivian Hayes. Then, he walked to the large industrial shredder in the corner of his office. The machine hummed to life. Expressionless, he fed the confirmation document, along with every other copy Vivian had signed, into the shredder's sharp, waiting teeth. One page at a time, slowly, deliberately. Zzz. The paper was mercilessly torn into tiny, indecipherable white flecks, which rained down into the bin below. As he watched the documents that held their past, her betrayal, and her final, desperate submission turned to dust, Ethan felt a profound, clarifying coldness. Not a void, not emptiness, but the feeling of absolute control that comes after a thorough and final cleansing. The traitor had paid her price. The past had been obliterated. He turned, walked back to his desk, and picked up the intercom. Notify the department heads. Meeting in conference room 1 in 15 minutes. We're launching the new energy materials project. His voice was firm, authoritative, absolute. Right away, Mr. Cole. Hanging up, Ethan adjusted the cuffs of his immaculate suit. His gaze returned to the window. The sun was bright now, bathing the city in light. A new project, a new empire to build, a new conquest. The crushed insects and incinerated memories were nothing but dust on the road ahead. He had no reason to look back. The final note of his revenge had been played, its echo faded. A new chapter of his life was beginning, written with two cold, powerful words: power, control. The winter wind howled around the glass walls of the skyscrapers, a mournful, trapped sound. The city was wrapped in a gray haze, the sun a weak, cold disk in the sky. Ethan drove alone to a cemetery in Westchester. It was far from the city's chaos, a silent world of stone and bare trees. The air was crisp, smelling of cold earth and pine. He wore a pure black cashmere coat, his posture straight, his steps measured. He carried no flowers, only a small, unmarked black velvet box. He stopped before a new, simple headstone. It was engraved with a single name, Greg Peterson, and the dates of his birth and death. Nothing more. No photo, no epitaph. It was a forgotten stone, lonely in the desolate winter landscape. Ethan stood in silence, his eyes on the name. Images flashed through his mind. Greg's twisted body on the pavement, his desperate screams, the greasy, leering face in the reunion video, but they stirred no emotion. He opened the black velvet box. Inside lay a tiny memory card, stained with a dark, reddish-brown speck. It had been recovered from Greg's shattered phone. It held the original video from that night, the clearest, most damning version, filmed with the most malicious intent. It included the sharp, undeniable image of that girlish blush on Vivian's face as she nodded. Ethan took out the tiny card. It felt cold, malevolent. He crouched down and placed it on the flat top of the headstone, a silent offering of final, cold mockery. Your masterpiece. Ethan's voice was low and calm, unnaturally clear in the quiet cemetery. Returned to its creator, he stood up, not giving the grave another glance, as if he had just disposed of a piece of trash. The wind picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across the stone, brushing against the tiny card, adding to the bleakness of the scene. From the cemetery, Ethan drove directly to the rooftop restaurant of a five-star hotel his company owned. The panoramic windows offered a god's-eye view of the entire city. He had booked the entire restaurant for himself. It was completely empty. He sat at the best table. There was no food, only a tablet and a thick manila envelope. He picked up the tablet first. It displayed several recent surveillance clips. Clip 1. Outside the Good Neighbor convenience store. Late at night, Vivian emerged, bundled in a cheap, bulky coat, her steps slow and heavy. The wind whipped trash around her feet. She hunched her shoulders, a thin, stooped silhouette that blended into the run-down surroundings, a ghost about to be blown away. Clip 2. The hallway of her tenement building. Under a single, dim bulb, her landlord, a beefy, aggressive man, was blocking her doorway, yelling and jabbing his finger in her face. Vivian stood with her head bowed, her shoulders trembling slightly, meekly holding out a few crumpled bills. The landlord snatched the money, spat a few more curses, and stomped away. Vivian leaned against the cold doorframe and slowly slid to the floor, burying her face in her knees, her shoulders shaking silently. Clip 3. A cheap diner. Vivian sat in a corner booth with a bowl of instant ramen. She ate mechanically, her eyes vacant. All around her was the noise of strangers and the smell of grease. A little girl accidentally spilled soda on Vivian's old coat. The mother rushed to apologize. Vivian looked up and forced a brittle, almost grotesque smile, waving a hand to say it was okay. The smile held no forgiveness, only the hollowed-out numbness of a person who had been completely worn down by life. Ethan watched the footage without expression. Vivian's poverty, her humiliation, her numbness, all displayed in high definition. The proud, vain, glamorous Mrs. Cole was now just another piece of debris in the gutter, struggling so hard that even her anger and resentment seemed to have been extinguished, leaving only the empty shell of a human being. He felt no pity. He felt no pleasure. He felt only a cold sense of confirmation. The traitor was following her prescribed trajectory into the abyss. He turned off the tablet and set it aside. Then he picked up the thick manila envelope. He unwound the string and emptied its contents onto the table. It was a stack of photographs. The subject was always Vivian. But these were not blurry surveillance shots. These were professional, high-quality photos. The first, Vivian's face in the convenience store, pale with despair as Nicole taunted her, her lip bitten raw, her eyes screaming with a helpless rage. The second, inside her dingy room, curled up on the metal bed, crying silently at her shattered phone screen, tear tracks stark against the dark circles under her eyes. The third, in the diner, that hollow, mask-like smile as she stared at her bowl of ramen. The fourth, on a wind-swept street corner, dragging her suitcase, her gaze utterly empty, as if her soul had already departed. The fifth, the sixth, each one a perfectly captured moment of her downfall, her misery, her utter desolation. It was clear that a professional had been following her, documenting her descent with a cold, cruel precision. Ethan looked through them one by one. His gaze was as calm as if he were reviewing a quarterly report, his long fingers steady. Every moment of her pain was reflected, small and sharp, in the black mirrors of his eyes. He reached the last photo. It was taken in a cheap salon. Vivian had cut off her long, beautiful hair. In the picture, she stared at her reflection, at the choppy, lifeless haircut, with the blank eyes of a marionette whose strings had been cut. Ethan's gaze lingered on this photo for a moment. Then he picked up a solid gold, minimalist lighter from a table. With a soft click, a blue flame leaped to life. He took the first photograph, the one of her humiliation. He touched the flame to the corner of the paper. FSSSD. The fire eagerly consumed the image, spreading fast. The orange glow danced, illuminating the hard planes of Ethan's face and the frozen stillness of his eyes. Vivian's desperate face twisted in the flames, blackened, and turned to ash. Without pausing, he lit the next photo, and the next. One by one, he calmly, methodically, fed the images of her destruction into the fire. The hissing of the burning paper was the only sound in the vast, empty restaurant. The air filled with the acrid smell. The flickering light played across the massive windows, a strange counterpoint to the cold steel and glass of the city outside. Ethan's movements were steady, deliberate, like a priest performing a solemn rite. He watched the images of the traitors' suffering turn to dust, as if witnessing a dirty piece of the past being cleansed by fire. When the last photo, the one of the broken doll with short hair, crumbled to ash between his fingers, Ethan let it fall. He clicked the lighter shut. On the polished table, there was a small, dark pile of soot. He picked up a white linen napkin and slowly, meticulously, wiped the almost invisible specks of ash from his fingertips. His ritual complete, he stood and walked to the window. The winter city lay beneath a lead-gray sky. Cold, hard, a giant, efficient machine. He looked down on it all. On the crushed insects, Greg in his grave, Laura in prison, Kevin in disgrace, Mark Hayes ruined, and Vivian being slowly consumed by the mud. And he, Ethan Cole, was still standing here, at the pinnacle of power, on a throne of ice. His empire was unshaken. In fact, by absorbing the choicest assets from the wreckage of Hayes Industries, his new energy project was stronger than ever. Revenge had not brought emptiness. It had forged his will, cemented his power, and given him a colder, deeper understanding of control. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. The traitor's suffering, like the ashes on the table, could be blown away by a breath, leaving no trace. He had no need to look into the abyss. He had filled it himself. A pure, cold satisfaction, as clear and hard as Arctic ice, slowly, silently, infused his entire being. It was not a fiery passion, but the supreme, quiet pleasure that comes from wielding the power of absolute zero. He lifted his chin slightly, his profile sharp and unforgiving. The weak winter sun broke through the clouds, falling on his face, but could not melt the eternal frost in his eyes. On the throne, only the cold remained, and the cold was his triumph.